A court orders a man to pay child support for a kid who isn't his, but he gets the last laugh. Now, I am interested in hearing about how this story goes. Guys, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe. We got to see what's going on.
Andrew had always been a responsible and law-abiding citizen. He had a steady job, a loving wife, and 2 children whom he adored. However, Andrew's world was turned upside down when he received a letter from the child support agency demanding that he pay $65,000 in child support. Andrew's world as he knew it came crashing down. He had no children out of wedlock, and he couldn't even begin to understand what this meant for him and his family.
It's a lot of
Andrew
money.
and Molly had been married for 20 years, and they had 3 teenage children. They were doing quite well for themselves and lived in a beautiful leafy suburb. Andrew was happy in his job as a graphic designer, and Molly was a middle school teacher. They lived normal lives until everything was turned upside down by the letter he received. At first, Andrew withheld the letter from his wife. He first had to compose himself after receiving something like this. Never in his life had his reputation as a man and a father been questioned. He and Molly were a team, but it was a lot for him to take in, and he didn't know how she would react to something like this. If she found out on her own, she would be furious with him.
Yeah.
All of his past girlfriends were never pregnant, not that he knew of. What if there really was a kid out there that was his? It wasn't easy for Andrew, but when he eventually told Molly about the letter, he was relieved to find that she was very understanding and wanted to get to the bottom of the mystery as well. He immediately contacted the child support agency to get to the bottom of this. After a series of phone calls and paperwork, he was stunned to discover that the child in question was a 20-year-old named David. David's mother, Jane, claimed that Andrew was the father, but Andrew had never even met her before. He hired a lawyer.
You know, a lot of celebrities go through this stuff too. You hear these stories all the time with celebrities having to argue back and forth about, I never even met that person. How in the world could I? Oh, well, you were in the same spot as them back in 2000, whatever. These kind of stories are crazy. Also, why would you need to pay child support for a 20-year-old? I thought the child support window was until they were 18 and then it was gone. So maybe somebody can inform me in the comments. But let's keep going with the story. I'm interested to find out what happened and how he got through this. The story is wild.
Began the legal battle to clear his name. It was not an easy fight. He had to clear his name and protect his family from the emotional and financial burden of the situation.
Yeah, I bet.
They were met with constant resistance from Jane and the child support agency, who seemed to be determined to prove that Andrew was the father. Molly was constantly worried about the financial burden of the case and the toll it was taking on her husband. The couple's children were also affected by the tension in the household. Andrew had always been a pillar of strength for them, but now he was constantly stressed and preoccupied with the case. The legal battle had already taken a toll on Andrew's finances. He had spent a significant amount of money on legal fees and was struggling to keep up with his household expenses. Andrew and his lawyer had been trying to get a DNA test done to prove that he was not the father, but Jane and the child support agency had been resistant. However, after months of legal wrangling, they finally managed to get a court order for the test. Andrew was relieved to finally have a chance to prove his innocence and put an end to the nightmare. Finally, the day of the DNA test arrived. Andrew and Jane's DNA samples were collected and sent to the lab for testing. He knew that if the results came back positive, it would be a devastating blow to his family. After what seemed like an eternity, the results finally arrived. Andrew's lawyer called him with the news. Andrew and Molly could finally breathe a sigh of relief. He finally had proof that he was not responsible for the child and that he did not owe any child support. But something was still nagging at him. He knew that he couldn't leave things as they were.
Yeah, who was
this person? He had to take the higher road and get to the bottom of things once and for all. Andrew wanted to know who this Jane woman was and what role she had in his life.
And why would she even want to do this?
Just a few days, the PI reported back to Andrew with...
The problem she wanted to do this because she's crazy. Why do people even want to do this? You would waste so much time, so much legal time to do this, maybe hoping that the person that you accuse doesn't have the money to fight back properly. I don't really know. But that's the only thing I can really think of as a reason why you might think you could get away with something like this and not have to face legal repercussions. So hopefully he sued him back or something, but we're gonna find out.
With his findings, and it was not pretty. He was able to uncover all of Jane's secrets. Andrew discovered that Jane had a history of making false paternity claims. She had claimed that several men were the fathers of her children over the years, and Andrew was just one of many victims of her schemes. It seemed that she had done this for years and never once gotten caught.
And got away with it.
He now had the evidence in his hands. What would he do with it?
Take her
Andrew was
down.
shocked and angry at the revelation. He couldn't believe that he had been dragged through years of legal battles and emotional turmoil for a child that wasn't even his. The thing that Andrew was blissfully unaware of was that she knew him well, or at least she used to. The wicked woman had other motives for what she was doing to him. The woman actually knew Andrew very well. He may not have noticed at the time. She was an ex-girlfriend of his called Jessica that never really accepted that they had broken up. She was obsessed with him and wouldn't let him move on when she couldn't. She swore her revenge upon him. Andrew had even forgotten about her altogether. He was astounded that someone would hold a grudge against him for so long. Andrew had good reasons for forgetting all about her. He never admitted this to anyone, not even his current family. The relationship he had once had with Jessica was terrible. It was borderline abusive, and the best thing he had ever done was get out of it. He remembered the therapy he went through after they broke up. At the time, Andrew was fairly young and not the man he was today. He was scared of Jessica, and instead of filing a restraining order against her, he decided to just run away from his past.
Just move?
He thought he was done with her now, but it seemed that she wasn't done with him. She had returned from the past and came to haunt him. Andrew wasn't going to let the situation slide. He knew that Jane Jessica had put him and his family through hell, and he wanted her to pay for her actions.
Jane Jessica?
He filed a lawsuit against her for defamation and emotional distress. He was determined to seek justice and make her pay for the damage that she had caused. The court ruled in Andrew's favor, and Jane was ordered to pay a significant amount of money in damages. Andrew finally felt like justice had been served. It should have been a momentous day for Andrew and his family.
But
the strangest thing came over him.
He felt bad.
He felt uneasy, like he still had a target on his back. Andrew knew that the trauma of the experience would stay with him and his family for a long time to come. He had to find a way to move on. After the legal battles were over, Andrew and his family started to rebuild their lives. It wasn't easy, but they were determined to move on from the trauma of the experience. Andrew learned from the experience and would be more cautious in the future.
Of course.
But he was just glad that it was all behind him.
All right. Well, I'm glad that he was able to get his money back. Like, I love little stories like that, man, because all is well that ends well. But yes, DNA testing should have been mandatory. They should have checked that. I mean, there's no reason why something like this should ever even happen, because that test should have just happened. If you say it's yours, then we need to talk about this DNA test right off the bat. If you say it's mine, we need to do a DNA test today. I think that this happens to so many people, probably more people than we realize. Honestly, you might think that this only happens to a select group of people, but I bet you this happens more often than we realize. And we just don't even hear about it, and people can't do anything about it because they can't fight it. I don't know. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Let's talk about it and let me know where we're going next. See you guys next time.